Version 2 of my temporary instrument panel came in, and version 2 of my brackets came in. These brackets include some tabs that will allow me to tie the brackets themselves to the sub panel, and thus creating a connection between panel and sub panel, really solidifying that whole area and making sure that the entire rack has a lot of support. I was amazed at how much that rack weighs. That'll only increase when performing maneuvers. I think it's smart to keep some structure tied together here. I've made some various templates and jigs and measurements, and I've outlined what needs to happen as far as removing some material from the sub panel so the back of the rack fits. From here, it's just some time with the trusty angle grinder, and then we'll test fit it. It's a tight fit right now, but a good fit. I'm going to continue to open it up all around to give it a little bit of space. The bottom section of my stack, which is the radio, needs some cutouts for the plugins, and my tabs to help connect all this are a little bit misplaced. I knew that I would have a little bit of room for some washers. It's a little bigger than I expected, so I'm going to wind up having to fabricate some spacers to go in there. Per usual, I've been really dragging my feet on this latest step, which is actually running some wire. But I think I've done all the procrastination I can do, and after all, it is only wire. So I'm gonna start and basically just pick a spot on this diagram and on my wiring diagram and pick a connector and start moving forward with it. And I'll go until I hit a roadblock, which, knowing me, will be about 5 minutes. So I'm already at a point here where I have to run the CAN bus wire. And that was one that I was gonna, again, delay on. Because it's like $5 a foot. And I still don't really know what I'm doing here. Well, I can't procrastinate anymore. This connector is almost finished. The G5 does not have a lot going in and out of it. And I've been very careful up to this point, so I'll just go for it. In my layout, the G5 is the third node on the CAN bus. The second node, and the one I'm heading to now, is the pitch servo. And again, that's a difficult run because it's a long run, and it's one that I have to, as far as my table is concerned, do a couple loops here. The other run of CAN bus out of the G5, it's a relatively short one here. I'll leave myself some extra. And that's just going to the Adahars. So this is about it. This is all that's going to go into the G5. And I can either continue to lay wire, which I'm sort of inclined to do, or another option is I can go ahead and add the connector. And I'm also kind of wanting to do that. I think for now, I'm going to go ahead and get the connector kit out for the G5 just because it feels like I'll accomplish something. We'll do some crimping. We'll even do some soldering. There's a lot to get these connectors on, and so to start this, I think it'll be fun to get at least one behind me. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Full disclosure here, I would really not recommend following my lead and putting on a connector this early in the game. It's gonna cement things, and you're gonna want things to be as uncemented as possible. I was impatient. I stopped with the one connector, but looking back, I probably wouldn't even do that again, though it hasn't caused any problems to date. So the connector kits are really no joke. You're gonna wind up spending hundreds, if not maybe in excess of $1,000 on connector kits if you're going with Garmin. And what they are is essentially all of the little pieces you need to make these connections. Everything from the pins and sockets to the back shells, grounding screws, and in this case, a CAN terminator, which I'm going to hold. As I mentioned, my G5 is number 3, so no need for a CAN termination piece yet. But it's essentially everything to make that sort of D-sub connection at the end of your wires. Hopefully simplifying things this time around. The Garmin instructions do provide which positioner I should use. So as I previously noted, I have a lot of connectors to make. So if you are watching this staring at the side of my hand and wondering, like me, what was I thinking with these camera angles? Don't worry, I'll get some better ones in the future. So you might notice I do some things a little different than Garmin prescribes. For example, my shield terminations or shield grounds will loop around before heading to the back shell rather than just going straight to it. I'll also use wire rather than the braid that they recommend. It's easier to keep tidy this way. If you don't get your shield terminations just perfect in length and they're going directly to the back shell, you always wind up with this little inchworm looking thing, and it can be really hard to get everything organized. It's already hard enough to get everything inside of the strain relief, and having to fight those shield terms just makes it a real bear. So there are some things like that that I will continue to do as I learn them. In some instances, it's very common in the industry, and there's, you know, more than one ways to skin a cat. The first connector is done, and that was exciting. That was really fun to use the skills that I learned way back in February when I took the class on how to assemble all of this. But right now, I think I'm going to focus on laying some wire. I'm going to get out the soldering iron for a second and take a quick break from running wire because I got a quick sort of jumper thing to make here. On the PFD, there's a few pins that are all going to ground. One of them simply gets grounded out to tell the PFD that it is in fact the PFD, and then the other two are the ground pins. And rather than run 3 discrete wires to the grounding block, we're going to go ahead and make a little mini harness here and just have the last 2 be jumpers to that connector. Now we'll take the 3 grounds, and these will go to the firewall ground block. It doesn't always look super complicated on screen, but some of these runs are getting thick. They're looking pretty good, but it's hard to wrangle some of them and get them to steer where you want them to steer. Well, wiring's going well so far. I've been making most of the straightforward runs. No connectors except for the G5. That one, of course, because I was impatient. The rest of them have to wait, or else you really lock yourself into your lengths and limited ability to adjust or pivot if needed. I'm getting into some of the more tangible areas of the wiring. That is to say, wiring in things like switches and knobs and headphone jacks that I will actually be interfacing with in the cockpit. Because of that, I've needed to figure out where these things are going to sit, where I'm going to interact with them, so I know how long to make these runs. Thank goodness I have a spare panel that I can sort of abuse. It's a little bit liberating because I can just drill some holes in this thing without very much care in order to start to see how this will come together and how long these wires are going to need to be. My wiring board, if you will, the work table, is equal parts sort of fantasy and reality, in that there are items where they're running in the absolute wrong direction and we're simply coiling them up because that's the length it's going to take to, for example, get them to the back of the airplane. Now there are parts of the board that are true to life, and this would be where wires run along the sub panel and up into the panel, whereas the distance is marked and the placement and location is actually very much how it's going to lay out in the cockpit. Having these areas that are true to life is really helpful because I can then hold up this spare panel, see how long my wire run's going to need to be, see where that switch, knob, headphone jack is going to lie, and then terminate my wire there. A lot of this is terrifying to me. It's a lot of money in cable and I don't exactly know what I'm doing here. And so when you just start snipping this stuff, not knowing if it's going to actually be long enough, if you measured right, if my ribbon party is going to pay off, is a little scary. But again, in the end, it is just cable. It can be purchased again, albeit with further credit card debt at this point. The next thing I'm going to hit is actually the lighting bus, and this is pretty easy. It's a single wire that's going to run to a few of the LRUs up on the panel, and it'll hook them all up to essentially the same dimmer. It'll require a number of I-splices that are exactly like what I just did, just positioned differently to make effective use of both the wire and space. So I have a master list of wires. It's a couple pages, hundreds of wires. And I'm going through and checking them off one by one at this point. I could have done it as I went along. Maybe I should have done it as I went along. But I think it serves as a little bit better of a double check if there's a bit of a span between laying the wire and checking off the wire, just to verify that both ends of each numbered wire are where they're supposed to be. So far, no issues, which is good. It started with like one loop of line, and now I have this absolute fucking bird's nest. This is the part where Dad cusses at you and gets out of his pocket knife and cuts it off, and then tells you how expensive the lure was. What in the sweet f*** happened here? I should be editing video right now, and I apologize for those of you who are sitting there this weekend going, oh, what Ryan's up to. However, I'm having the time of my life with this. This is entirely engaging and fun to sit here and continue to add wires and have this plan that I worked out and watch this thing take shape. Probably one of the most satisfying sections of the build that I've done to date. Every day it's like a new box waiting at the door. This time around, more wire. And if you're thinking to yourself, how could you possibly need more wire? Well, me too. But I do. I needed some additional wire. First off, coax. That's for running antenna. Won't need it for a bit, but I will need it. After the coax, I got some yellow and green. Odd colors, I know, but it's slightly higher gauge. It's going to run my flat motor. Some more blue and orange signal wire. This is going to run AP disconnect and a couple other signals from control sticks and other areas to the panel. I got some big beefy red and black pitot heat and pitot heat ground. I got some nice thin red and black. Again, this is for power to things like my dimmers, which don't need a whole lot of gauge to them. And the Goldilocks right in the middle. This is slightly bigger than the 20 gauge I've been running. I believe it's 18 or maybe 16. It's going to run my lights. In addition to the wire and some connectors, I got a set of clear templates, a little late for me. These are really helpful when you're planning out where all your LRUs are going to sit. Not only is it the shape and bolt pattern of the LRU itself, it contains the connectors, which was part of my ribbon experience, making sure that I left some room for connectors. But these could be helpful with layout. I got them because there's a few pieces where I'm really wanting a template. One of them was the battery backup, and the TCW battery backup that I have also has a matching template in this system sold by Stein. I'll let you know how useful they will be. I don't know if it was worth the cost, but we'll see. I am excited to put some of this additional wire to use, and I will be doing so shortly. But I'm also going to get started on a video because it's been a while, and so I could use a break from this. It'll be nice to sit down, take a look what I've done for the past couple weeks, and get it all out for y'all to see. So, another thing that I've been doing is taking version 1 of the panel and just cutting it up and drilling holes, and doing so really without a care because it is the rough draft of the rough draft. And it's allowing me to see where I want some of these items to land. It's allowing me, quite frankly, to make some mistakes and not care too much about it. So if, as you see me start to place things, if something looks, you know, a little close to the edge, I've probably made note and we'll be correcting that in the future.